Right. Starting the stream. Alright, let's see. Let me see. Okay. I don't want to hit myself, bro. Anyhow. Right. Am I leaking any social security information? No. Okay. Alright, welcome to the Anki 101 stream, I guess. How are you all doing? I hope you guys are having a great evening, or day, or morning, or yeah, I hope you guys are doing, at least. Let's stick to that. Right. So what we're going to be doing here is we are going to go step by step with everything from downloading Anki to how to build a study method using Anki. Right, so first thing is you want to go to this website, which you can literally just go into Google and type Anki, it'll be the first one that shows up. All right. And then you just hit the big download button. It'll take you down here. And based on what device you have, you can choose, right? Now, for me, it's Windows. I'm obviously going to choose Linux. Nah, I'm going to go with Windows. Let's turn that off. I'm going to go with downloading Anki for Windows. Keep the latest version. Now, it will usually nag at you every so often to update to the latest version and doing all of that. Honestly, that's up to you, but yeah, I'm just buying time for it to download. Let's be real. Let's be real. Okay, and then you open it. Once it's finished, it's going to ask you if you are okay with it wrecking your computer internally, which ideally you would press yes. Now we're going to skip that tiny detail because I already have Anki installed. Okay. And then once you open it, you're going to have this fun thing pop up for you where you get to choose your language. Right now, for most people, it's going to be English. At least I'm assuming if you're watching this. Wait. No, this is French. Wait. Okay, so for most people, it's going to be English. And then we are going to choose English, select yes. Please on the Mac. Okay. So it's going to open like this. Now it's asking me to update because I haven't updated. Do I feel like updating? No, so I'm just gonna ignore that for now and pretend it didn't happen. Okay? Now this is going to be what happens when you first open Anki. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Tools, Preferences, and then we're going to switch on to Night Mode so that you don't immediately blind yourself. And then you're going to restart the app. There you go. And it's going to ask you for the update again. Ignore. So this is what happens when you first open Anki. All right. If you want to make cards, you can start adding, and you can type a whole bunch of stuff. So like, what is my name, for example? I can type astrophagetical, and there you go. Right, once you close it, you start studying. Here's where you get your card. It's going to look a bit like that. All right. Now, normal Anki is a little bit plain to start off with, so we're going to try and up things a little bit by adding a couple of add-ons. Right now, there are a lot of add-ons to choose from. There are a whole buttload of add-ons to choose from. And hey, most of them won't really do much. Right, so if you look through the add-ons, there's a whole bunch of them to choose from. Some of them are helpful, some of them aren't. But each one will have a different function. one thing to bear in mind is because these are community made, they can be very bugged and they can be very non-secure. Okay, so you want to keep that in mind when you're downloading add-ons because, it's not very fun when you get hacked. I personally did not enjoy it once when my computer got put on ransomware and I had to pay like £60 to get it back. But I'm starting to monologue again and trauma dump, so let's quickly move on. Now, you noticed that I spoiled something towards the beginning. These are the add-ons that we're going to be focusing on because they are very, very key to day-to-day Anki use. All right. Now, for the most part, other add-ons, they're very nice for quality of life, and we're going to look at some of those a little bit more later. But these four add-ons are the main ones that you will want. Now, Amboss obviously is only going to work if you have an Amboss account. The way you make an Amboss account is you go to Amboss, and then you make an account. If you are signed in from your institution, you can type in your institution. Let's say. So yeah, you can add your institution, and if you are sponsored, you can get it from there. Really straightforward. And then you want to get the Amboss add-on. So the way we're going to do that is we are going to hit Control F to search on page, and just go straight to Amboss. Now, here's where the magic starts. The way you add add-ons to Anki is a little bit different from, say, modding a mod folder. Right? So you're going to scroll down until you see this download option. Where is Fues? I murdered him and buried his body in the backyard. Okay, so you're going to copy this code that's down here, and then you're going to go back to Anki, open Tools, Add-ons, and then you want to get add-ons, right? And it's going to ask you for this code. This code is the one that you find down here, right? It's basically beneath all of the explanation for everything that it does. And once you scroll all the way down, that's where you're going to find the add-on. All right. So we're going to add it, it's going to start installing, it's downloading all of Amboss onto Anki, and then there you go. And then we're going to go back, continue the cycle for the other three. I'm going to explain what each of these does in a bit. It's better search. But we're just going to speedrun a little bit. So forgive me if I go quiet and just entering the very fun game of focus. All right, so these are the four, what I consider to be the four essential add-ons to any person's Anki experience. All right, so then we're going to close and we have to reboot Anki again to reopen it. Now, it's going to ask me to log in to Amboss. I'm very smart, so I don't have any of my login information. But the nice thing is it's showing you exactly what the Amboss add-on does, which is anytime you don't understand a word or a concept, or you want to recap a concept, you can just highlight the word, and it will show up right there. Okay? And then once we close it, Amboss add-on, remind me later. Okay, so I'm going to explain each of these add-ons as they gradually come up, because each one has their own different function and each one is a little bit different from the other. But we'll explain them as we get along. Okay. The next thing to look at is settings. Now there are two types of settings for Anki. The first one is this set of settings, which you get from Tools, Preferences, and then you can scroll up or down. Now user interface size depends on how good your vision is. My vision is kind of bad, so we're gonna have to edit that. And in terms of scheduling, V3 Scheduler is a lot stronger than the normal schedule options, so it can be a little bit nice to turn on V3 Scheduler. It can also be very overwhelming, so just be a little bit aware of that. The next thing is synchronization, which we will talk about just a little bit later. And finally, with backups. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to be honest, I've never used this feature before, so we're just going to pretend it doesn't exist. Okay? And then the second set of settings is the deck settings. Now, these are very special because you can set different presets, right? Now, the default preset gives you this bunch of settings, which is very nice. The only issue is that it's kind of trash, right? First of all, the maximum reviews per day is way, way too little. The learning steps are very short, especially if you're trying to use Anki day by day or for a long-term review. The other thing is that the display order, it will often like try to keep things in order, and it'll, like, for example, it'll show new cards starting with the oldest, and the maximum interval is a whopping 100 years, right? Which is great on paper. Like, I personally love to study for 100 years, just like a notable Greek mythology character. Shout out to Sisyphus for teaching us how to survive eternal torture. But the point is it's too long, right? And so let's go through each of these, what they do, and what the ideal quote-unquote setting is for each of them. Okay? Now, the first one is the daily limits. For reviews, we're going to keep it simple, just smash the 9 button until it goes off the screen, and then it will automatically set it to the maximum. The new cards a day, this does vary from who's doing what. Some people will prefer having less new cards because you want to focus more on reviews, especially if the concept is a lot harder. You want to sort of introduce them slower. If the concept is easier, you can speed through the new cards much, much faster. And so, a featherless biped, isn't that Socrates? But okay. Yeah, if it's an easier concept, you can speedrun through them a lot faster. So, I personally put 200 for mine. You can put however many you want. You can put up to 9,999 new cards a day. But I personally keep it at 200. Next is the learning steps. These will control how Anki will behave. So, for example, if I just open... yes, it's not going to let me save. For example, if I just start studying, it's going to control these buttons down here. Okay? Yeah, the design is very human. Right, so what your settings are will change how Anki behaves when, like, how it will spoon feed you the information. If you have shorter learning steps, you're going to get through the information, you're going to memorize the information a lot faster, but it's going to take more time to memorize a large amount of information because you're seeing it a lot. Okay, but if you extend the learning steps, you can get through more pieces of info faster, but you end up losing out on some of the stuff. All right, so the ideal recommended is these numbers. This is based on the Anki deck, invented by everyone's favorite person, Anki. And so these are very good if you are trying to review a concept that you already know, if, for example, you're studying for a long time, such as for the USMLE, because you want to take your time with these things, you want to sort of slowly understand what's going on. Yeah, so you want to slowly understand the information and memorize it properly, and so getting a longer learning step is nice. Right, for the graduating interval, this differs from person to person. What graduating interval does is that once you finish these, so to explain, what happens now is if we press here, you'll notice these numbers changed. Right, so again, it used to be 1 minute, it's now 10 minutes. In good, it used to be 10 minutes, now it's 30 minutes. If we go back, if I were to press good a second time, if I were to press good now, I'd see the card after 30 minutes. And then once the card shows up again, if I press good a second time, it's going to show up after a day. And then once I decide to study my name tomorrow, if I get it right again and I press good, the card's going to graduate and it's going to go to the graduating interval. What it does after going to the graduating interval is it's going to slowly increase. Okay? The easy interval literally just controls what happens when you press easy. Okay? 4 is a nice easy number because it's if you've memorized the information by heart or if it's very basic, you can skip ahead and just knock out that tiny piece of info so you don't have to look at it again. And then you have insertion order. Now insertion order controls which cards you'll see first. Right, so right now, by default, it's set to sequential, oldest cards first. Just to demonstrate, let's save, let's make another card. What is my age? 7,670 days. Okay, so you'll notice is that you get the first card first, right? And then the second card second. Okay? Which is kind of nice if you want to slowly understand and have it take you through the full process. But for the most part, if you already have studied the information, if you've read it in a book, if you studied it from a lecture, you already know the stuff, so you don't need it to be re-explained by having everything in order. You can just keep it randomized. And then you have lapses. This is what happens after a card graduates, so after you've fully learnt the information according to Anki. If you forget it and you press again, it's going to take it through the relearning steps. All right? Now, the minimum interval basically just says, hey, you forgot the card. This is the minimum new interval that we're going to give it. Okay? I am losing my head. Then you have leeching. So what leeching does is if you completely don't know what a card is, or if you keep on forgetting it and you keep on pressing again, in this case, if you press again 8 times, the card is going to be considered leeched. Right? And then leech action controls what Anki does to the card once it's considered leeched. You have 2 options. You can tag the card, so it's just like highlighted and Anki's like, hey, watch out. This card is leeched, you kept getting it wrong. Maybe it's a bad card, maybe the information itself needs fixing. Or you could suspend it entirely and so it won't show up again. Right? Preferably you want to keep it tag only. The only real situation when you'd want to suspend a card The only real reason you'd want to suspend a card is if the card itself is if the card itself is bad or if it's not helpful to you. And so having it automatically suspend the card can kind of really, really make it annoying to study because you lose half of the cards on the first day. Now, then you have display order. So let's just make a couple more decks. Of course, I forgot to save. Let's just make a couple more decks. Deck 1. Deck 2. Okay, now you can insert these decks into each other just by clicking and dragging them into each other. So then you get this nice drop-down menu. Okay, let's open options again. Now, what happens with display order is once it decides to gather the new cards, it will sort them by deck. So it will answer the cards for the default deck first, and then it will go to deck 1, and then it will go to deck 2. Okay? Now you can have it in ascending position, descending position. All of it's mostly just a bunch of nonsense. We can keep it by deck and it's completely fine. Now the sort order, without getting too deep into the details, just keep it random. And then new and review order. Okay, this controls what happens to new cards if you have cards to review as well. Now, if you want to finish your reviews first and then focus on new cards, you can put it to show after reviews. Right, and so this will have you finish your revision from previous study, and then it will start showing you the new information. You can also show it before reviews if you want to start the new information, which there's a fun reason why you might want to do that, but we'll touch on that a little bit later. And then you have mix with reviews, which is where it will try to combine and just where it will try to combine them. Now, the inter-day learning review order, actually I haven't touched this before. Okay, so now let's just say that you decided to pull an all-nighter, right? You kept going. Once you enter the new day, which for Anki is considered at 4 a.m., right? Anki thinks that the new days start at 4 a.m. It's very good at time, a little bit better than I am, but that's okay. And so what happens to the old reviews if you are still studying? Is the live going to be available on YouTube after? Maybe. Maybe. Am I getting judged? Yeah, so this will control what it does. If you mix with reviews, it mixes it. It mixes the cards from the new day with the reviews. And then for review sort order, what it does is based on like this. It's based on these. So for example, due date is cards that are due today are going to be solved first. But because for Anki you can control the minutes as well and the hours and stuff like that, if the card is due now, it's going to prefer to solve it before it solves another card that's due in 30 minutes. Or you can have it in terms of ascending intervals, so cards that have an interval of 3 days get solved after, cards that have an interval of 30 minutes. The whole display order stuff is a little bit complicated, but we can keep it as due date and then random, just for simplicity's sake. Okay, then we have burying siblings, which is my favorite thing to do every weekend. So, what is a sibling? Okay, let me show you guys by remembering to save this time, and then making a couple of cards. So let's open deck 2, make a card. We're going to make an extra fancy card called a close card. And what we are going to do is what information should we put? Simon Kell gave this a yes, which I hope you did. but we'll find out in a couple seconds, I guess. Now, we can hide. Now, the way close works, which I'm going to go over in a little bit in the next step, but the way close works is you can blank out words in a sentence rather than have it be a front and back, kind of like it would be with Quizlet. So let's just blank it out like so, and then we can add it to the deck. Now this creates two cards, okay? The first card will be blank and gave this a yes, and the answer is Simon Cowell. The second card will be Simon Cowell gave this a yes. All right, sounds straightforward. Now because so this is called a note, and each of these is called a card, right? These two cards are siblings because they came from the same note. Now, how does burying siblings work? Well, if you want to bury new siblings, what I can do is these two cards are new, and they are siblings. I only want to see one of them today, and I'll keep the other one to look at tomorrow. And this basically protects you from looking at the same sentence 7 different times if you have 7 different pieces of info that you've blanked out. And then you have burying review siblings, which does the exact same thing but for reviews. Now audio, the way audio works is, let's say you have something like, let's say you have sound in your Anki card. For example, anyone that's learning a language using Anki might want to have the audio play. Now, sometimes you want the audio to play automatically, sometimes you don't. This just lets you control that. Sound good? Then we move on to the advanced stuff. Okay, so the maximum interval, which we said was by default to be 100 years, which is great if you're studying on the scale of a sea sponge, but for us human people, keeping the maximum interval at 100 years is a little bit insane. And so we'll keep it as 30 days. What this does is let's say, save the back in settings. Whoops. So let's say I got this card right. Okay. And then I started to continue to get this card right for the next month. Okay? Anki is going to notice that I'm getting this card a lot, and so it's going to show me the card less. Maybe the first time it shows me the card after 2 days, and then it shows me the card maybe after a week, and then after a month. Okay? Now this says that once it hits a month, don't increase the time. So after it decides, hey, show this card after a month, it's just going to keep saying show the card after a month. It's not... My OBS disconnected. What does that mean? Hey. Oh. Be back. Let's go. So, the starting use is by default 2.5. This is a pretty good number, to be honest. And you don't really want to mess with this much unless the cards are too hard or too easy. And then you have the easy bonus, the interval modifier, and the hard intervals and new intervals, and this is all just a massive bunch of algorithm and a massive bunch of maths. And as much as I believe that I am infinitely famous, I don't believe I am infinitely famous amongst engineers. So we're going to skip the maths and we're just going to lower the hard interval a little bit. So that if you consider a card to be hard, it will lower the amount of time before you see it again. Okay? And that is all. That is really all you need to change for the settings. Then we have making cards. All right. This is where things get a little bit juicy. So let's make a new deck. Let's close this. Let's make a new deck called Hypothetical Scenarios. All right. And then we are going to start drawing up a bunch of hypothetical scenarios. To add cards, you just press add, or you can press A on your keyboard. Okay, so let's generate a couple of hypothetical scenarios. If you guys want, you can help out in the chat. Just toss a bunch of hypotheticals. We'll try to come up with some fun stuff with that. For now, I'm just going to say, what should you do if you get stuck in a river with 15 living crocodiles? Okay. Now you guys can take a guess at what the answer should be. Just open your mouth and eat them. All right. Now this is now I understand that you want to say become a capybara, but that would apply if it was say 20 crocodiles, but for 15 crocodiles specifically, eating them is a much better option. Okay? Becoming Bear Grylls would work if it's less than 3 crocodiles. More than that and you start to enter danger territory. Okay, so this is our new card. Now here in the back, extra, you can add information. Like you can add more information. So for example, we've established that become a capybara if there are more than 20 crocodiles. Become Bear Grylls. I'm not going to capitalize his name because I don't respect him. Don't cancel me on Twitter, please. That is a joke. If there are less than 3. Okay. Now tags is something we're going to touch upon a little bit later, but let's just add crocodile to the tags. Okay. So you've added your first card. Let's show you how that would work. If you study now, you get this sort of question, and there's your answer, and it will show you the extras down here. Sound good? Let's go back and break it down just a little bit more. Make it a little bit more nuanced. Okay, so there are different types of cards based on what you can do. There's the basic and its variants, which is basically your average Quizlet flashcard. Then there's close, which is the very fancy, very powerful card type. And then image occlusion, which we added using an add-on. Right, we're going to touch up on each of these separately. So basic is very basic. You know, like we showed earlier, what is my name? And then Astificatical. I'm not going to repeat the same card twice. Basic and reverse card basically is, let's say I want to do flashcards about the periodic table. So aluminium, and then I might put AL, right? And so I have to remember that the symbol for aluminium is AL, and AL stands for aluminium. Okay, and what that's going to do is it's going to create 2 cards. One of them, it will show me aluminium, and I have to guess AL. The other one, it will show me AL, and I have to guess aluminium. I think you get the idea. Then you have basic and optional reverse card, and basic and type in the answer, which is self-explanatory, I'm pretty sure. One of them has the option of a reverse card, the other one makes you type in the answer, and you compare to the actual answer. Then you have close. Now, close is generally the most powerful card type. It's one of the most powerful card types in Anki. And the reason for that is that A, you can blank out more than one thing. B, you can add extra information that you can see later. And C, you can control which cards have what blanked. So let's look at that, for example. And the way a closed card works is, let's take a very simple sentence. I think become Bear Grylls. Now, if you notice these buttons over here, this button over here, this is what creates close deletions. Now you'll notice it gives me a shortcut, Control-Shift-C, right? And that's the keyboard shortcut for it. Okay, so if I want to remove bear, I press this button, or I can press Control-Shift-C, and it'll remove that. And I can do the same thing for grills. I'm going to do that on the keyboard. Now you'll notice it gives me C1 and C2. That means that it's going to create two cards which are siblings, right? Let's say I wanted to make them one card. I can remove this 2 and just replace it with 1. Now you'll notice that they're both C1. Sound good? And then I can add, for example, back. Extra works on less than 3 crocodiles. And then this will be my information. So that's the basic way to make a close card. Now we can get a little bit more fancy with close, and we can start going Bear Grylls has a very strong gut microbiome because he constantly drinks his own urine. Okay. And then we can start blanking out these. Now, one way to do it is I can press the keyboard shortcut, and then I can press the keyboard shortcut again, and then I can decide, hey, I want this C2 to become a C1, so I can keep it in one card. Just to show you what this would look like. So this is what that's going to look like. It's going to have 2 blanks instead of 1. Okay, now I could do that. The other thing I could do is I could go... capybaras have wide snouts. And I could, instead of manually editing it, what I could do is I could press Alt along with the keyboard shortcut, which is Control-Shift-C if you're on Windows, Command-Shift-C if you're on iOS, and then you throw in Alt, and it will automatically do it for you. Okay, I'll keep it as C1, and then for example wide, I can keep it as C2 just by not pressing Alt. So that's the basic way to make close. Then we have image occlusion. Now image occlusion is a is another very strong card type. Why is it a very strong card type? Let's look at a diagram of a mitochondria. So I can just copy the image. Now one thing I could do is I could go manually into Paint and start blanking out this stuff. The other thing I could do is I could press on this, which adds an image occlusion. And then it opens this little menu over here. Okay, and I can start to blank out these things. I'm just going to blank out 4 of them for now. And then based on how I want to do it, it will either blank out all of them, and I have to guess 1, or it'll blank out only 1, and I have to guess 1. To show you what that looks like, let's go with hide all, guess 1 first, and then... So this is what it's going to look like. I have to guess the red one, and then the answer is DNA. I move on, it blanks out a different one, and we keep going. So that's the basics for image occlusion on how to make them. Okay, the other way is let's just grab a different image. for example, this. And then we go here. Let's just do two very quick ones. Go back here. So it's only hidden one instead of hiding both of them. So that's the very, very fundamental on how to make cards. Now, how do you make good cards? And to do that, let us open a lecture, actually, and pull out some real information. Okay. Okay, this is very awkward. I can't exactly show you what's happening on my screen, bro. Oh no, I spilled stuff on my keyboard. Oh, how could this happen? Oh my god. That's crazy. I can't believe something like this could happen. Wow. No, oh, the water on my keyboard, it's awful. What will I ever do? How can I ever recover from this? This is unbelievable. Give me something easy. Give me something easy. Where did it go? Okay, we're back. Anyhow, so look at this image of the spine that I just so happened to find and didn't rip off from any particular lecture. So there's a lot of information on the slide. Now, one way I could do it is I could just take this picture and then slide it into an image occlusion and call it a day. But I've pretty much shown you how to do that. And that's the boring way. Let's show you how to make decent cards. Yeah, the spilled water. Yeah, no. I cleaned it. So many tissues. Crazy. Crazy stuff. Anyhow, so there's a decent amount of information here. Now, one way I could do it is I could go the cervical spine has 7 vertebrae. And then I keep going and I go thoracic. Thoracic has 12, so on. Right, all the way until I finish, and I put all of this whole slide into one card. However, anytime anyone looks at that card, it's immediately going to give them a stroke. Okay? So to give you guys a quick rule of thumb, if the card takes more than 10 seconds to solve, after you already know the information, it's probably not that good of a card. Okay? So for example, for this one, the cervical spine has 7 vertebrae. And has a, is this convex or concave curve? And okay, let's just stick with 7 vertebra because I don't remember anything about the neurology block. But the point is that this is very short. So let's just close out the word 7, for example, and then the word cervical. Skip these. So for this is a very short sentence. I can read it very quickly and I can get through it. This one also, it's a very short sentence, and as you can see, the amboss add-on is working. It's showing me all the fun stuff. But that's besides the point. The point is that this sentence is short, it's very quick to read, and so it's very quick to answer. Okay, so that's what you want to do when you're making cards. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. That is a pretty good hypothetical scenario, yeah. So, and the reason it's a good hypothetical is because it's not actually true. Mitochondria is plural. They are the powerhouses. So, mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cell. We close these two. Now this is a very short card. It's very good, it's one line, it's very easy to read, it's very quick to read. But we can do better. Now how can we do better? We can use these fancy little syntaxes up here. Okay, so for example, I can bold the word mitochondria. I can also bold the word powerhouse and bold the word cell. Right, this means that as I'm reading, it's a lot faster for me to read, because instead of having to read mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cell, if I'm going very quickly, I can just read mitochondria blank cell, okay, mitochondria powerhouses, and then know the answer's powerhouses. The other thing would be is to, for the other card, is I just read powerhouses and cell, and I'd immediately know that I'm supposed to be thinking of mitochondria, right? And depending on how much emphasis you want to put, you're going to change what the card looks like. Okay, so for example, because this is a very straightforward one, I can just fully highlight all the 3 points that I need to focus on. And so I bold, underline, and italicize for all of them, and that makes them very, very highlighted. Okay, so just to show you guys how that becomes. As you can see, mitochondria and cell are bolded, and so it's a lot faster to read. Okay? Now, there is one more thing to bear in mind, which is sometimes you can get stuck. Okay, sometimes it can be very difficult. Sometimes it can be very difficult to create cards because the information itself is a lot, right? If you're looking at, let's say, the adverse effects of a medication, or if you're looking at different diseases that Staph aureus can cause, right? Which, spoiler alert, it's all of them. And so what you want to do is for those cases, you can create mnemonics, or you can borrow mnemonics from different sources. And so that's going to make it, and so that won't make it long to read. Sorry, that will make it quick to read, but it's going to make it a lot easier to memorize. And the reason is that when you're solving 700 cards in a day, once you reach card number 300, you aren't actually going to be reading the sentences. Right? The whole point of bolding, underlining, and italicizing is that once you're at that point where you're only half reading this, half looking at the screen with only like 2% of one eye and the rest of your brain is asleep and your right arm isn't even functioning and you've removed your left leg, that's when you want to start going, that's when you want to only read what you need to read to answer the card, which is where we start highlighting. Now, there is one way to highlight even more than bold, underline, italicize, which is to change the color of the text. Okay? But generally reserve those for very similar pieces of info where you can start to color code them. So for me, for example, if I'm looking at a lecture, and let's just say the lecture's focused on, for example, osteomyelitis, I can start color coding the cards based on different bacteria. And so in my head, as I'm going through the cards, I'm going to be going, okay, this is green. It's related to Staph aureus. And what else is related to Staph aureus, for example? That it's part of the skin flora, and so there's a very deep injury. And so just like that, and so, for example, yeah, you get skin and soft tissue infections. You don't get a specific tone, but fair enough. Fair enough. And so you can start to build these associations based on different color. And because you have both text color, which if I just type my name out in here. Now let's say I want to change the color here. If you open it, you can basically generate an infinite variations of color alone. And you can also generate highlights to highlight the text. And so because of these combinations, you can create a lot of very different ways to color code certain things. All right, so that's how you can handle close. Now for image occlusion, it's a little bit different. See, you'll notice I opened the card from choosing the note type. This changes everything about what the card itself will do. Okay? Because if you remember, what I did before was I would just I would open the image, it would give me this fancy little menu option, and I can start drawing stuff. Right? Now this is nice, but we can do better. Okay? And the way we do better is we go to fields. So for fields, we can look at, for example, header, and we can say, we can add a header to the card, for example. So this would be the spinal cord, spinal vertebra. And then we can also add a footer, which is a footer. Anyone that's touched a Word document, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with what headers and footers are. And then you can also add extras to image occlusion, which is very nice. So let's say I want to add more explanation. So the spine is hella cool, right? And then I want to add even more information. I can say, I stole 3 spines yesterday. All right. So that's fields, and that's what you can do with fields. Now, the other thing that's very interesting to do with image occlusion is you can add layers. Now, what can layers do? You can have masks and you can have labels. So labels can help add a second thing if you want to, let's say, just label a certain box. So how many? And as you can see, because the layer is lower, it's going to show lower. And based on these layers, things can show up above or below once you make the card. So let's just be very fancy and do something like this. My drawing is incredible, but it's fine. It is fine. And then if I hide all of these and I close, you're going to see something like this. So it's going to close them, these are going to be closed, but you'll notice that the text that I added on the labels layer did not become occluded, right? It did not become an occlusion on its own. And that's important because once you, that's pretty important because it's a good way if you want to add text to images that don't already have text. Okay? So that's on making cards. Then we have synchronizing and importing decks. Now, synchronizing is something you need to do. You need to make an Anki web account. So you need an email, you need a password. Right? The way you do that is you sign up over here. You enter an email and you enter a password. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to expose all of my information to the interwebs. But the long and short version of it is that once you make an account, you can insert your Anki web ID and password, and voila, you've signed in. And every time you press sync, it will sync up to the Anki web cloud, and so you can solve it on other devices. So for example, you can use Anki on your phone and you can sync it to the one on your laptop over here, and it will keep track of what's being solved where. Okay, then we have importing decks. And for that, I'm going to have to... Oh my god, the water, no, not again. Oh no. Oh my god, how did this happen? That's wild. That's so strange. How? Help. Someone fetch me a tissue. Oh my god, no, not the what? Anyhow. So as you can see, I am now majestically in the... Now we are majestically in the El Faisal Master Deck drive, which is a very good drive that I would definitely recommend to anyone that's looking to study from a decent source. And what you're going to do is you're going to start downloading. Not like that. That is not how you download. So it's going to scan for viruses, as most drive things do, and then it's going to download. And all I have to do is click on it, and it will add it to my decks. And as you can see, here it is over here. If I keep opening, I'll eventually find it, and there it is, glomerular diseases. And there we go. Okay, and so you can then start solving based on these cards. And hey presto. Alright. And so that's how to import cards, and then once I sync it up, I can then start solving as well on my phone. And that'll help keep track of both things. Okay. And that is on importing decks. Next is how to use the browser. Alright, this is where things start to get a little bit juicy. So, if you press browse on any deck, it's going to open this terrifying screen. Right? Now this will show you every single card that's in that particular deck. But as you can see, there's a whole bunch of fancy schmancy stuff that's happening down here. Now what does this do? The first thing is stuff that's this stuff which is anything that's due today. It's going to filter that. And I can basically filter based on the stuff today, if I need to study it now, if I don't need to study it now. And then there's flags. Now you can flag cards. For example, if I want to suspend them later, I can then flag them, or if I want to move them to another deck, just quick water break. I can flag them, and then if I want to do something to those particular cards, they're there, they're ready. So let's say I want to move cards to another deck, I can just flag them, and then I can sort by flagged, and there we go. Then we have card state. It'll separate if it's new, if it's review cards, so if it's matured, or if it's currently learning. And then we have suspended cards. Now, the way suspending a card works is if I just open the current deck. Let's say this piece of information, I don't want to look at this card, right? Why? I personally don't like it. I have a personal vendetta against PR3 Anki granulomatosis, and so I don't want to look at this card. Now the way that happens is you can right click it and you can suspend, and you'll notice that it's highlighted in this yellowish color. Right? What this means is this card won't show up as I'm solving. Okay? And so this is a very useful tool because sometimes you'll get cards that are very, very easy. Sometimes you'll get cards that are very self-explanatory. And so in that case, you'll want to use something like this. To suspend cards. Right? And that's how and so if I can just show you, you can also search up various cards. So for example, let's say I want to search up FSGS. It will show me all the cards that contain the word FSGS, but I can also search by other things. So for example, I can search based on tags, which are a very helpful way to quickly sort out cards. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about tags later, but the main thing is that all I have to do is I have to type tag and then a colon, and because presumably you have the better search add-on, it's going to open this nice little menu, and you can pick which tag you want to go through. So let's say I want to go for the tag crocodile. It's going to show me every card that was tagged with the word crocodile. Or let's say I want to look for a specific deck. I can do similarly. I can just type deck. It'll give me all of my decks in a list, and I can go through them one by one. A similar thing with flags. And then let's say one, it's not going to show me any cards because nothing was flagged. I can also do is for is new, is due. Like if I'm learning a card, or if it's a new card that I haven't seen before, or if it's suspended, for example, then I can filter stuff based on that. Then we have how to use tags. So if you're using the Anki deck, or if you're using the AU master deck, what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of tags. And these tags can be very, very helpful because it can be a quick way to filter cards in a way that isn't based on decks. So I'm just going to move a couple of these cards. We mentioned FSGS before, so I'm just going to move these to a different deck, and we can call it FSGS. Okay, so I just created a new deck. If I go back, I created a new deck, it's FSGS, and it has these two cards. Now this is very nice, right? But let's say that I needed to look at all of the cards that were under glomerular diseases. Right? I can use tags to look at cards that are in different decks. So as you can see here, if you look here, this is the name of the deck. You can see all of these are under glomerular diseases from the El Faisal Master Anki deck, except for these two, which are under FSGS. Right? And so, for example, because Anking will filter and will use tags such as First Aid, Costanzo, Boards and Beyond, you can filter decks based on those different tags. And you can also do this here. For example, I can filter based on weeks. If I want all of the cards from week 1, I can Control A to select them all, and then I can move them all into a completely new deck called week 1. And now they're all under week 1, and I didn't have to constantly search through them and check which this one's week 1, this one's week 1, this one's week 1. I can just do it from the tags. And then we have making filtered decks. So filtered decks are a very, very helpful tool in Anki because you can pull decks from various places and put them into a separate deck, and then once you finish that deck, it will leave and go back to the original one. Right, so for example, let's just call this Jew cards. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to type is Jew. Right, and this is one very helpful deck that you could use, especially if you plan on studying, for example, for the USMLE. Now, what you'll notice is that any card that was due today, so all of my learning cards and all of my review cards, obviously I don't have any because this is a very new account and I've been using it for 1 hour and 18 minutes. Probably less than that, actually. But it's pulled all of the due cards and it's put them into one deck. Right, so I can start with the cards that I need to revise first. And it's kept them all into this one deck. And then I can, for example, study the new cards specifically from week 1. Okay? So that's one thing you can do. The other thing is a custom study. Right, so let's open week 1 and do a custom study session. Now, for a custom study session, this can be very, very helpful because what you can do is you can change the way that you're studying this particular deck for one time only. So as you can see, you have a bunch of options here. For example, you can increase today's new card limit. If you remember from the settings, we put it at 200. Let's say today I was feeling a little bit frisky. I wanted to increase that. And so I can increase it up. Obviously, it's not giving me the option because I don't even have 200 cards in total. But that's fine. I can also increase today's review limit. I can review cards that I've forgotten. I can review ahead, so I can study cards that are meant to appear tomorrow. I can also study by card state or by tag, which is another very helpful tool because this way I can choose tags. And so this gives me different tags I can choose. And here's a custom study session made based on those requirements. I can start solving it. And what this is very helpful for is it can be very helpful if you're trying to cram. Because what you could do is I could just go to the El Faisal master deck. If I just empty this very quickly. what I can do is I can go to the Al Master Deck, make a custom study session, study all the cards in the deck in a random order. Right, now I did empty the card out. I did empty the deck out earlier, so this is a little bit awkward. But what happens is you have this custom study session, which can be very, very helpful if you're trying to cram or if you're trying to quickly get through a lot of cards. Now, this is where we get into the more juicy part of the live stream, which is what are the different methods to study using Anki. Now, based on how you choose to study using Anki, right, there are different ways that you can optimize it. For example, you could be studying for long term or short term. And this is all a bunch of stuff to think about. I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on that later on. You might want to study a little bit, like little by little, might want to study day by day or cram. Day by day versus cramming. Or even studying only, for example, on the weekends, or studying, or like taking weekends off, or stuff like that. And so these various things can affect how you can study, and you can optimize Anki for those things. So we mentioned, so for example, for short term and long term and day by day versus cramming, the way you can modify those is through the options panel under the settings. I chose the one deck that doesn't work for, is under the options panel. So here we have the default one that we said was very nice for reviewing, but I could add another preset, which is it's a week before the exam. Save me, please. And now you can see I can make a whole bunch of different settings, and it's completely separate from the default ones. So let's say I'm cramming the life out of this deck, and so I'm going to keep all of my intervals as short as possible so I can learn the information very, very quickly. I'm going to make sure I can study as many cards as humanly possible. I'll make the maximum interval very short so I can get as many cards done. And you want to vary it based on how you choose to study. Another thing is for long term versus short term, is you want to plan your maximum interval. Based on how long term or short term your study is. If you're studying, for example, over the course of a whole year, you can keep the maximum interval at 30 days or even sometimes more than a month. Right? Because you're going to be seeing the card a lot, even at that high interval. But let's say you're only studying Anki for 2 weeks, right? There's no way you're going to want to see the card. There's no way you're going to be able to see the card again if its interval is 30 days. And so you're going to lower it down a lot more, and you're going to set it to, say, 14 days or 2 weeks. Or even less. Maybe you want to set it to 1 week. The other thing is that we talked about, which is day by day versus cramming. This will mainly affect your learning steps. And for the weekends one, this is one of the add-ons that you can do, which I did not mention. But let me just make sure that I'm not leaking all of the top secret information. Let's make sure. Okay. Oh, hi, welcome back. So, this is an add-on called Free Weekends, which if you want to have break days, if you want to say take, for example, weekends off, or if you want to have a specific date that you want to take off, in order to not mess up with Anki's scheduling, you'll want to use an add-on like this, and then you can modify the settings. Now, I haven't used this in a very long time, so I don't really remember what these settings are and how. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, no, there we go. Let's go. So, as you can see here in the settings, you can toggle which days you want off. You know what? Let's go the full yacht. Let's just straight up do it. Save this. Go to add-ons. Get this add-on. And it doesn't work on this version. Rip to that. Anywho. So if you want to take breaks, you can modify the settings, which I know this looks like you are opening the entire history of, you're opening the US Constitution in Spanish and trying to read it in Python, but I promise it's not that complicated. If you look here, it says days week and it gives you the key. So each day has a specific number. Now here you can see that they've chosen the number 6. That means that they're taking a day off on Sunday. Right? If you wanted to ignore all of these and just not take a day off, you can put -1. Okay? And then you have, for example, if you want to take specific days off, right? Let's say I don't like studying on New Year's. So I can set New Year's Day, which is 1/1/2024 for next year, and that will become a day off for me. And this is a nice way to make it so that when you're studying, you can take days off and not have to study without messing your schedule. Now, like I said earlier, I don't do this. I just take the L, in all honesty, because unless you're studying on the timescale of more than 2 months, the scheduling isn't really going to change if you take one day off. Like, realistically speaking. Okay. So that's one thing to consider when you're studying with Anki. Is how you plan on studying it. Do you plan on studying after the lecture, before the lecture? And so you want to play around with the settings, with the learning steps, with your maximum interval, until you find what suits you. I'm not going to give you a specific rule book, which is like, this is correct, because even if I do, that would be correct for me, and it wouldn't be correct for you. Okay? And then we move on to the final thing, which is how to gamify using Anki. Now, I don't know if any of you noticed, but Anki looks very, very ugly. Like, I'm sorry to whoever designed it, but if you're going to be studying from Anki, and you're going to be pressing spacebar every single day for the next 3 months, this is going to wear you out, and eventually you're going to hit a point where you burn out. I'm not going to suggest a cure for burnout, because the only way to cure burnout is to solve whatever's giving you burnout, whether that be a lack of sleep, a lack of breaks, or a lack of friends. The only way to solve burnout is to solve the cause. But what we can do is we can make Anki just a little bit more fun. Right? And there are different ways to make solving Anki cards slightly more fun. And I could have sworn I had. Yeah, and so there are some like very, very good add-ons that you can get, which can make solving Anki cards more fun. For example, one of them is the RuneScape mod. Right? And what this will do is it will give you an XP bar, and as you solve cards, you can start to level up your various skills. Another one is the Habitica add-on, which, for anyone that isn't familiar with Habitica, Habitica is basically a way to gamify your life. And so it's an app. So it'll do is you can give your character various skills and various missions, And so as you solve those various missions, you start to level up your different skills. And as you level up those skills, you gradually, like, hypothetically speaking, become a better person. But in reality, it's just, aha, big number, get bigger. Yay, fun. So those are two ways that you can turn Anki into slightly more of a video game. There was another one, which is, I think, Life Drain. Life Drain is an add-on that gives you a bar at the bottom that will slowly go down with time. And so the idea is that this is your health bar, and so you need to keep solving to try and keep the health bar up. And so that's another way you can slightly make it like you can add pressure, which can incentivize you to solve. There was one more, which I'm going to spill water on my keyboard another time just to get this done. Yeah. So this is the final add-on, which is puppy reinforcement. And the way this works is that as you solve cards, as you get them right, you get these little pictures of puppies to help encourage you to do better. Now, obviously, I'm not omniscient, I don't have all the information in the world, but you know what does have a ton of information, especially a ton of information that I don't have? Reddit. Now, this isn't an advertisement for Reddit. The Reddit kind of isn't the best. Like, it's good, it's just not the best at times. And so, if you go to the Anki subreddit, you can actually, but the Anki subreddit is very, very useful. It can give you a lot of very helpful tips. So, for example, earlier today I was just searching up how you can turn Anki into more of a video game to help with burnout. I really don't know if there's a cat, if there is a cat add-on. But the point is if you have any like wacky questions or things that you're wondering, you can go to the Anki Reddit. It's probably been answered at some point before. And yeah. I believe that's it. Woo! You finished. I'm gonna be honest, that felt more like a lecture than live stream, but hey, gotta break the first time, right? Please stab me with a gun. Anyhow, why are you guys still here? Leave.